Hi, I'm Susan, a 28-year-old graphic designer navigating life with a chronic back condition caused by a car accident 3 years ago. Things were manageable, thanks to my prescribed medication, until my mother-in-law decided to interfere. You're absolutely glowing today, Susan. The new client loved your designs, my best friend Jessica said during lunch. A nurse at the local hospital, Jessica and I have been inseparable since college. Thanks, Jess. I've been feeling great lately. The treatment Dr. Torres prescribed is working wonders. I hesitated, then added, speaking of good news, Thomas and I are expecting. Jessica's eyes widened. Oh my God, that's amazing. Does the dragon lady know yet? Jessica, I scolded, laughing. Jennifer isn't that bad. Well, most of the time. Deep down, I knew Jessica wasn't entirely wrong. Jennifer, my mother-in-law, was a wealthy widow who thrived on control. At Sunday dinner, her reaction was precisely what I feared. Darling, this is wonderful news. Jennifer clasped my hands in hers, her perfectly manicured nails digging in just slightly. You'll need to move in with me during the difficult months. Thomas, sweetheart, you're always so busy with work. I can take care of her properly. I noticed Diana, my sister-in-law, flinch at Jennifer's words. She and her husband Charles rarely spoke up. Diana caught my eye and quickly looked away. Actually, Mom, we're planning to handle things ourselves, I said, trying to sound firm. Nonsense. With your condition, you'll need experienced guidance. The way she emphasized condition made my skin crawl. At my next checkup, Dr. Torres emphasized the importance of my medication. Susan, your health comes first. We'll adjust the dosage for the baby, but stopping it completely isn't safe. Can you explain that to my mother-in-law? I asked, half joking. She insists medications are harmful during pregnancy. Let me be clear, Dr. Torres said, his tone serious. Ignoring this could have severe consequences. That evening, Thomas tried to mediate. Mom means well, honey. She just wants to help. Thomas, don't you see? Something feels off. How do you notice how Charles and Diana barely speak when she's around? They're just private people, he said with a shrug. Mom's been amazing since Dad died. Running charities, helping at church. I couldn't shake my unease, especially after Jennifer began setting up a nursery in her house without consulting me. Susan's so blessed to have me, she announced at her social gathering, as if I wasn't standing right there. The suffocation began the moment I moved into her home. Jennifer hovered constantly. No coffee, no stress, no autonomy. She even threw out all my food, replacing it with a better diet. One morning, I reached for my medication, only to find the drawer empty. Looking for something, Jennifer stood in the doorway, her smile tight. My medication. Where is it? I disposed of those harmful pills. Natural remedies are better for my grandchild. They're prescribed. I need them for my back pain. Back pain makes better mothers, she said dismissively, dragging me downstairs despite my protests. The pain was excruciating. At my next checkup, Dr. Torres frowned. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. Where's your medication? I can't find it, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. Jessica visited after her shift, gasping when she saw me struggle to stand. What's that bruise on your arm? Jennifer helps me up the stairs. She's just very hands-on. This isn't help, Susan. This is abuse, and you should hear what she's been saying at church. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She's telling everyone you're mentally unstable, that you're unfit to be a mother. Susan, Mrs. Henderson from the hospital board said Jennifer's been asking about postpartum depression facilities. The room spun. She's? What? Diana's voice interrupted from the doorway. I should have told you sooner. She hesitated, tears brimming. When I was pregnant, I lost the baby because of her. That night, I overheard Jennifer on the phone. I'm very worried about Susan's mental state. She refuses to eat properly, acts erratically. Thomas needs to consider alternative care arrangements after the baby is born. I tried calling Thomas, but Jennifer had confiscated my phone. Your phone activities agitate you, dear, she'd say, locking it away. The next morning, I could barely walk. Jennifer's eyes sparkled with satisfaction, feeling under the weather. Perhaps if you followed my guidance better. Staring at my reflection, bruised, pale, and shaking, I realized this wasn't just about control. Jennifer was dangerous, and I was trapped with no medication, no contact with the outside world, and growing fear for my baby's safety. That's when I noticed the empty prescription bottles in her bathroom trash. My hands trembled as I carefully picked up the destroyed pill bottles. They were mine. Looking for something, Charles's voice startled me. He stood in the doorway, his face grim. "I should have warned you sooner," he said. "She did the same thing to Diana." "What happened to Diana?" I whispered, dreading his answer. "She was high risk, needed medication to manage her pregnancy. Mom insisted on natural motherhood, building strength through pain. Diana lost the baby at 6 months. The doctor said it was from untreated complications." My stomach churned. "Why didn't you stop her? She controls everything, our inheritances, the family business. But I can't stand by and watch this happen again." Charles hesitated before leaning closer. "Check behind the loose panel in her medicine cabinet." Following his lead, I pried open the hidden compartment and found dozens of prescription bottles. Some were mine. Others had different names. "She takes them herself," Charles whispered. "Has for years. It started after she put Grandma in that awful nursing home. There was an investigation back then, but she buried it." From that moment, Jessica and I documented everything. We photographed the bruises, recorded conversations, and saved texts where Jennifer told Thomas I was too unstable to talk. Jessica uncovered even more. "Remember Mrs. Peterson?" she asked one day. "Her daughter works at the bank. Jennifer's been forging Thomas's signatures and transferring company funds into her accounts." When Thomas finally came home for a weekend, I confronted him. I was exhausted, barely able to stand, but I laid out everything: the empty bottles, the bruises, the financial records. "She stole my medication, Thomas. She's been taking it herself." "That's ridiculous," Jennifer snapped, appearing in the doorway. "She's having mental episodes. Ask anyone at church." "Like how you asked about postpartum facilities?" I shot back. "Like how you spread rumors about me being unfit to be a mother." "I was protecting my grandchild," she hissed. "Like you protected Diana's baby?" The color drained from Jennifer's face. "What is she talking about, Mom?" Thomas demanded. Before Jennifer could respond, a wave of pain hit me. It was so intense I collapsed, the last thing I heard being Jessica shouting for someone to call 911. When I woke up in the hospital, Dr. Torres was livid. "Severe medical neglect, malnutrition, untreated chronic pain," he said. "Susan, I've had to report this." "She's been stealing my medication," I whispered, barely able to speak. "I know, blood tests confirmed it. Social services is involved now." Thomas sat by my bedside, his face pale. "The investigators found records," he said quietly. "Complaints about Mom, Grandma's caregivers, the nursing home, even her old housekeeper. All buried with money and threats. There are even suspicious withdrawals after Dad's accident." Diana came in later, holding a thick folder. "The police found these in her house. Records of forged prescriptions, financial fraud, even a diary outlining how she planned to get custody of your baby." Dr. Torres returned with another update. "Jennifer is being questioned by police. They found prescriptions from 12 different doctors in her home. But right now, our focus is getting you and the baby healthy." Leaving Jennifer's house felt like stepping into a new world. Thomas made sure we moved far away, installing security cameras and changing all the locks. One morning, Jessica showed me her phone over coffee in our new kitchen. "Did you see the church newsletter?" Jennifer's been removed from all committees after Charles and Diana testified. The congregation is in shock. The dominoes were falling fast. Jennifer's perfect facade shattered completely when Mrs. Henderson caught her stealing prescriptions from the senior center's medicine cabinet. The security footage was damning. Jennifer was caught on camera methodically rifling through the senior center's medical storage room during what was supposed to be a charity visit. "The nerve of that woman," Mrs. Henderson spat during the emergency board meeting. Her voice shook with rage. "All these years preaching about charity while stealing from elderly residents. She even took Mrs. Johnson's heart medication last month." Jennifer's downfall didn't stop there. Former housekeepers began coming forward, their voices no longer silenced by her threats. Maria, who worked for Jennifer for over a decade, filed the first lawsuit, inspiring others to share their horror stories. "She locked me in the basement when I threatened to report her for stealing Mr. Mitchell's pain medication before he died," Maria testified, her hands trembling as she described the 12-hour ordeal. She said no one would believe a housekeeper over her. Jennifer's empire of lies and manipulation crumbled under the weight of her victims' voices. The birth of my daughter, Olivia Rose Mitchell, was a moment of pure joy, untainted by Jennifer's presence. She was healthy, perfect, and most importantly, free from her grandmother's control. The delivery room was filled with love and support, everything my pregnancy should have been from the start. Thomas held Olivia one evening as we sat in our new peaceful home. "Mrs. Wallace from the country club called," he said. "The IRS is investigating Mom's charity foundation. She's been writing off personal expenses as donations. They've uncovered millions in tax fraud." Not long after, our home security system pinged during Olivia's nap. Checking the camera, I saw Jennifer sobbing at our door. Her designer makeup ran down her face, and her once perfect appearance was disheveled. "Please, I'm sorry," she begged, her voice cracking. "I need help. Everyone's abandoned me, the club, the church. I'm facing jail time. I'm your mother, Thomas. You can't let them do this to me." Thomas's voice was steady as he answered through the intercom. "No, you're not. Mothers don't torture their children or try to kill their grandchildren. Goodbye, Jennifer." A week later, we watched her luxury car get repossessed. Her once loyal social circle vanished. The woman who had commanded attention at every social gathering now couldn't even get a table at the local diner. 10 years. Jessica read from the news article one morning. She got 10 years for prescription fraud, elder abuse, and tax evasion. Most of her assets are going to victim compensation. The judge's harsh sentence reflected the severity of her crimes, especially after hearing of the senior center thefts. Diana and Charles used their share of the compensation to open a support center for survivors of family abuse, turning their pain into purpose. Thomas rebuilt the family business with integrity, implementing strict financial controls and transparent practices. Every so often, Jennifer sent us letters from prison. They were filled with tear-stained promises of change and requests to meet Olivia. I never opened them. "Some toxins don't deserve a second chance to poison you," I said as I tore up the latest letter. "Olivia deserves better than her manipulation." Olivia is in kindergarten now, bright, happy, and surrounded by real love. My back still aches occasionally, a painful reminder of those dark months, but I have proper medication, a supportive family, and peace. Sometimes people ask if I feel guilty about Jennifer dying alone in prison after her stroke last month. I don't. "Mommy, tell me a story." Olivia calls from her bedroom, her voice full of joy. I smile as I head upstairs. My story isn't about forgiveness or reconciliation. It's about survival, justice, and protecting your children from toxic people, even when they share your blood. Hey everyone, I'm Linda. I'm 24, and today I'm going to tell you how my dream of becoming a pediatrician nearly crumbled, all because of the one person who promised to support me forever. Have you thought about maybe taking a break from school? Matthew's question hung in the air over dinner. I froze, my fork suspended mid-air, instantly recognizing that manipulative tone he developed lately. "We've discussed this before," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I'm not taking a break when I'm doing so well." It felt like deja vu, taking me back 2 years to the night we first met at my friend's gallery opening. He was everything I thought I wanted, charming, successful, and he seemed genuinely supportive of my ambitions. We got married within 6 months. "Listen, babe, I'm just saying, we're not getting any younger. Don't you want to start our family?" I was putting away my textbooks when my phone buzzed. It was Margaret. "Girl, did you see the time? Rounds in 20 minutes. I panicked. "Matthew, did you mess with my alarm again?" He shrugged nonchalantly. "It keeps me up at night." "That's the 3rd time this week," Margaret muttered when I arrived, rushing to the hospital. "Something's off, Linda." I pushed it out of my mind and threw myself into my pediatric rotation. Working with kids reminded me why I fought so hard to be here. "That was fantastic work with the Thompson kid," Dr. Chen said, catching me after rounds. "You have a natural gift. Ever thought of specializing in pediatrics?" "I'd love that," I beamed. "I'd be honored if you could mentor me." "Absolutely," she smiled. "You've got potential not many show." Later that evening, Matthew seemed unusually interested in my phone. "Who's this Dr. Chen you're always texting?" he asked casually. She's my mentor. But wait, how do you know I'm texting her? I saw the notification, he said. I frowned. My phone was in my bag across the room. You've been checking my phone. Can you blame me? His voice rose. You're always at the hospital or studying. How do I know what you're really up to? I'm doing what I've always done, Matthew, pursuing my dream of becoming a doctor. You used to support that. That was before I realized how much it would take you away from us, he snapped, his eyes darkening. From our future family. Later, in our shared office, I noticed my laptop was open. I always closed it. Checking a browser history, I found searches I never made. He had been monitoring everything. The next day, at the pediatric ward, a tiny voice interrupted my thoughts. Dr. Mitchell, look what I made for you. Little Emma held up a crayon drawing. It's beautiful, sweetie. Is that us? Yeah. When I grow up, I want to be just like you. My phone buzzed again. Margaret. We need to talk. Matthew came by the study group asking weird questions about Dr. Chen. This isn't normal. I stared at the message, my hands trembling. The sweet man who swept me off my feet 2 years ago was disappearing, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I came home to find shredded study materials scattered across the floor. My laptop screen was shattered, the hard drive ripped out. What happened here? I asked, my voice shaking. Oh, those old papers. Matthew's tone was infuriatingly casual. I was cleaning up. They looked like trash. Those were my annotated study guides. My finals are next week, and my laptop. Maybe if you put as much effort into us as you do into your books, things wouldn't be falling apart, he snapped. Desperate, I called Margaret in tears. I don't know what to do. Finals are next week. Get over here now, she insisted. I've got your cloud backup from our last study session. But Linda, something's seriously wrong. As I grabbed my coat, Matthew's brother, Andrew, blocked my way. Listen, princess, my brother works hard to give you this life. Know your place and drop this doctor fantasy. Get out of my way, Andrew, or you'll regret it. At Margaret's place, things went from bad to worse. Your joint account is empty, she showed me, holding up her phone. That's impossible, I stammered. My student loan refund was just deposited. Together, we scrolled through months of withdrawals I hadn't made. My hands shook. The next day, Dr. Chen found me crying in the conference room. Here, she said softly, handing me a card. This is a number for a women's resource center. And Linda, this isn't your fault. He was so different when we met, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Take this, she pressed a small notebook into my hands. Document everything, times, dates, witnesses. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Is this Linda? I'm Rachel, Matthew's ex-girlfriend. My heart skipped a beat. How did she get my number? Margaret found me, Rachel explained. Listen carefully. Matthew did the same thing to me 3 years ago when I was in law school. What do you mean? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. He destroyed everything, my notes, my laptop, even my relationships. He kept saying a wife shouldn't have a career. I lost my scholarship because of him. Why are you telling me this now? Because I wish someone had warned me. Check the storage unit on 5th Street, Unit 3177. You'll find proof of what he's really been doing with your money. That night, I started a secret video diary on a new phone Margaret got for me. Day 1 of documentation. Found my study materials destroyed. Time 7:30 p.m. Witness, Margaret Parker. As I was recording, I heard the front door key turn. Quickly, I hid the phone under a pile of clothes. Matthew walked in, eyes cold and unfeeling. Still upset about those papers, he sneered. A real wife would be more concerned about why her husband had to destroy them in the first place. I forced a smile, keeping my voice calm. You're right, Matthew, I'm sorry. He gave me a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. See, was that so hard? Now let's talk about quitting school. I nodded along, Rachel's warning echoing in my mind. One way or another, I was going to find out what was in that storage unit. The next day, I made my way to the storage facility on 5th Street. Unit 3177 was packed with boxes of real estate documents. My hands trembled as I flipped through files, falsified loan applications, forged signatures, illegal property transfers. I've been trying to track these down for months, a voice behind me said, making me jump. I turned to see a man in a suit. I'm Michael Thompson, Matthew's business partner. Those files prove he and his brother Andrew have been running a massive fraud scheme. How long have you known? I asked, my heart racing. Long enough to build a case, but I need your help, he said, his voice urgent. The FBI is interested, but they need more evidence. You can get it. I returned home, determined to act like everything was normal. Maybe you're right about medical school, I told Matthew, feigning defeat. Finally seeing sense, he said, a smug grin spreading across his face. I knew you'd come around. That night, I found my stethoscope snapped in half on the bed. Consider it motivation to quit, Matthew smirked. I dialed Rachel. He's escalating, I whispered. That's how it started with me, she said. He isolated me, destroyed everything I cared about. Don't let him win. Margaret and I began moving my important documents to her place, piece by piece. My birth certificate, social security card, passport. We were being careful, but Matthew was becoming more suspicious. One evening, he caught me packing up my medical books. What's this? Planning to run? He demanded, eyes blazing. No, I was just. He slammed his hand against the wall beside my head. You ungrateful bitch, after everything I've done for you. Terrified, I fled to Dr. Chen's office, bruises forming on my arm where he had grabbed me. We're getting you a restraining order right now, she said, taking photos of the bruises. I know a judge who can expedite it. He has Andrew watching the house, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Stay with me tonight, Dr. Chen insisted. Tomorrow, we'll move you somewhere safe. Michael called with an update. The FBI is very interested in these documents, but you need to be careful. Matthew's getting desperate. With Margaret's help, I moved the last of my belongings while Matthew was at work. My cousin's place is off the grid, she reassured me. He'll never find you there. As I packed, I found a letter from my medical school. Final exam rescheduling approved due to domestic violence documentation. My phone buzzed. It was Michael. Everything's ready. The feds move tomorrow. I took one last look at the house I once thought would be my forever home. Matthew's latest threat echoed in my mind. You'll never be a doctor. You're nothing without me. Watch me, I thought, closing the door behind me. After finishing my final exam, I hugged Dr. Chen tightly. I can't thank you enough, I said, my voice filled with gratitude. Her study materials had been a lifesaver. You earned this, Linda. Every single point, she smiled. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with breaking news. Local real estate mogul arrested in massive fraud scheme. Matthew's mugshot filled the screen. It's over, Michael texted. FBI just raided the office. Andrew tried throwing Matthew under the bus, offered to testify against him. What happened? I asked. Andrew thought he could save himself, but he ended up implicating himself even more. They're both going down. The next call was from Rachel. Linda, I testified about everything, the abuse, the sabotage, the financial manipulation. 3 other women came forward too. Weeks later, Margaret read the sentencing report aloud. 15 years for Matthew, fraud, tax evasion, and financial abuse. Andrew got 8 years. Both had their real estate licenses permanently revoked. The feds seized everything: houses, cars, bank accounts. Standing in my graduation gown, I could hardly believe it. Top of my class, with a residency at Boston Children's Hospital waiting for me. This is for you, Rachel said, handing me an envelope. Inside was her law school acceptance letter. I'm going back. You inspired me. Dr. Chen approached, surrounded by a group of students. Linda, meet our first support group for students facing domestic challenges. Would you share your story? Of course, I replied. Looking at their faces, I saw my past self, scared but determined. Michael had transformed the real estate business, making it entirely legitimate. Your case helped us clean house completely, he told me one day. Then a letter arrived at the hospital with a prison return address. Matthew's handwriting was unmistakable. My dear Linda, I'm so sorry for everything. I dropped it in the shredder without reading further. Down the hall, my pediatric patients were waiting. Dr. Mitchell, guess what? Little Emma, now cancer-free, ran up to me. I got accepted to pre-med. That's amazing. I hugged her, remembering the drawing she had given me years ago. Later, Dr. Chen appeared in my office doorway, ready for the domestic violence awareness panel. Always, I replied, grabbing my white coat, The one with Dr. Linda Mitchell, pediatric oncology, embroidered on it. I looked at my reflection and saw no trace of the frightened woman I'd once been. Matthew tried to bury me, not realizing I was a seed. Now I had bloomed, helping others grow through their own storms while he rotted in a cell of his own making. My new office overlooked the hospital garden, where I counseled students dealing with toxic relationships. Your abuser's biggest fear, I always told them, isn't that you'll leave, it's that you'll thrive without them. So what would you do if your toxic partner tried sending you an apology letter from prison? Would you read it for closure, or would you shred it without a second thought, like I did? Share your thoughts in the comments below.